The name's Anonymous. Fanboys Anonymous. Welcome, everyone, to episode 002 of Review to a Kill, a James Bond review point podcast where we'll be breaking down the films and the 007 elements that make them what they are. We are following up with Dr. No here. We're talking about From Russia with Love. Continuing on with the franchise as we were speaking about before, go ahead and check out episode 000 and episode 001 if you want to continue on this journey with us. And who are we? Well, you should know by now, but in case you don't, I am your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me as always, I've got the old man, Callum Wiggins.
From Britain with apathy.
And Robert D. Felice.
We were saying back in England. Hello.
So, From Russia with Love, we are trying to tighten up this podcast a little bit here, but we're still going to talk about a lot of the same things that we were talking about in the last one. We're going to talk about the girls, the gadgets, the villains, the music, the action, the humor, other miscellaneous things here and there. I also want to institute something that I didn't think of the last time, and after we get done recording, I'm like, this should be a gimmick, because I love my puns. I think instead of saying something's like ultimately at the end of the day, the movie's good or bad, I think we should say it's shaken or stirred. Because stirred's bad. Or unless you get to, you only live twice, then it's a little bit different. But overall impressions about the movie. I have always been fond of From Russia with Love, but I have a fluctuating opinion about it. Sometimes it's one of my favorite ones. Like, not favorite, like top 5 or so, but maybe like within my top 10. And then some other times I'm like, I don't like this one at all. And then other times it's in the middle. This one goes all the way around for me. Most recently, it's been towards the higher end. Forget exactly where I ranked it currently, because I haven't published my my rankings. I'm kind of doing them again at the end of this, after I've got like a better idea of how I would rank everything. But currently, as I bring up my my drafts here on the website, it looks like I've got the Dr. No I have to still adjust to. That's another thing. I eventually that's going to get a little bit higher than what I had it before, but right now it's in my A tier, my secondary tier. How you guys feel about it overall?
I thought this was so much better than Dr. No. I really enjoyed this one, and of course it was my first time seeing it, but I don't know, for me, this hit so much better than Dr. No.
I enjoyed more of the components of this movie more than I did Dr. No, but I found the overarching story of this to be weaker. So I don't really know. I still kind of sitting. It's really close to me between the two of them, just because I feel that the overarching narrative especially between Bond and Tatiana, was very, very weak, and so I didn't enjoy the overall story, but I enjoyed the bits and pieces that went into telling that story, if that makes any sense.
It's definitely a different movie. Like, Dr. No, for all of how slow, I guess you could say is the word, that it takes to get there, it's a mystery, and at the end, it's this kind of bombastic sort of, all the big explosion and everything like that. Whereas this is very, very simple. It's basically just, they're going to meet, they're going to bang, and then we're going to screw them over. And the plot's laid out right out of the gate. Like, you know exactly how things are going to go. And it's sort of like, I don't know, it's a follow-up, but at the same time, it's not a follow-up because the book wasn't originally set as like a direct follow-up to Dr. No, because they're all out of order and everything. But it's very, very interesting. I think we're going to have a particularly fascinating podcast. Would you like to hear about it? Well, stay tuned. And if you do, drop a comment below and tell us your thoughts on this kind of thing. Do the same thing you would normally do here. Subscribe to all over the place on the Facebook, on the Twitter, on the YouTube channel. Hit that little notification bell as well. Hit the like button, hit the share button. If you want us to do more of these in the future, of course, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/fanboysanonymous. Check out the merchandise shops on TeePublic and Redbubble. I might maybe try to do some of these Bond-related things, put them up there. I don't know. If you have any ideas, let me know. And Yeah, it's mostly the plugs that are out of the way. Let's start things off with I guess just the opening. That would make sense.
You don't say.
They finally start. Finally, it's only the second movie. We get a pre-credit sequence, and originally this was not planned to be a pre-credit sequence. It was going to be the opening of the movie, and they decided that they just liked the flow of it a little bit better if it would have that, and then go into the title sequence, and then go into the rest of the movie. It's had a big tradition going forward. I'm a huge fan of the fact that they did that. It's one of my favorite things in the Bond films is to watch the pre-credit sequence and see how they do it. And in this one, it's the second Bond film, and they're making you think that they killed off Bond already.
Yeah. Weird start, but it actually kind of hooked me in early because I was wondering, well, what the hell is this? You know?
Yeah, it really caught my attention. Just obviously, you know that that's not actually the case, but having never seen the movie before, but knowing that there's a huge franchise that spawns off the back of it, I kind of wondered what they were doing in the first part of it. Really.
Do you guys think that there's going to be like clones or one of those things?
Well, it might have been something where Bond fakes his own death or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll get
That's kind of
to
what I'm
like
thinking.
5 of those.
Yeah. I imagine that's something that he falls into quite a few times.
I really like how I don't know what they did. I've been trying to look into it to see if there's any information about it, but I really, really like what they did with Connery's face. It looks like, in retrospect, that he's wearing a mask. There's some weird, like, powder on him or something, or it's got this latexy kind of feel. Knowing that it's a mask, like kind of like Mission Impossible style, every time I watch this movie now, I'm like, yeah, you know what? They make it look like he's got a weird face.
I thought it was good. It was really good. It really it makes you sink your teeth into, oh, okay, they're really coming to kill this guy, and they're trying to do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Something that I didn't get the vibe of in Doctor No.
But I also got the impression that just seeing Connery's actions during this sequence, I just felt like, okay, this isn't Bond-like. Because he's going around the bushes and stuff like that, and he's being tailed, obviously, and then he just starts shooting. I think, okay, you wouldn't do that if you were Bond. You would be a bit more subtle about the entire thing. Like he just immediately, like, that's the sort of thing that you'd expect a henchman that has absolutely no idea how to be James Bond would do in that situation.
And he's
I thought it was 63 and they just hadn't ironed out the character traits yet, so he was just being a dumbass.
And he does the whole thing where, like, when he shoots, he pushes the gun forward. I don't know why people tend to do that. You would think it would be the opposite, but it's the whole, like, I'm gonna, like, I don't know, make the bullet hit you better or something. When they were filming this, apparently, one of the things that happened was whoever was responsible for casting this particular role didn't think twice about the idea that they had cast somebody that looked a lot like Connery. So when they did the first reveal of the mask, they were like, this dude looks way too much like Connery. People are going to be really confused. And it's like, you called off Bond. Oh, wait, it's a mask. Oh, wait, it's Bond. So they had to reshoot it with somebody with a mustache so they could be like, there you go. See, it's not him, And one of the people that's in the scene is the actor is Walter Gotell. He plays Morzeny. He's going to be in like 6 more films as a completely different character. One of my favorite characters, actually, General Gogol. Big fan of the guy, but he is one of the many people that if you don't really pay too much attention, you wouldn't realize is in separate Bond films. There's various people here and there. We'll talk about another one a little bit later, but sometimes people play different parts in different movies. Maud Adams is one. She's in 3 Bond films as 3 different Bond girls. And there's like people that are like, this guy's the guy running the communications thing in one movie. And then in another movie, he's another communications guy. Or this person's the guy who bumps into Bond in the street in this one shot. And then in another movie, he's this completely separate character or whatever. Morzeny in this film, if we're talking about villains, he's not really a great villain. He's got one spot towards the end, and that's about it. 2 spots towards the end, I guess you could argue, but he's really just a guy. I don't really give him a pass or a flaw. As far as villains goes, he's forgettable. You guys even remember who Morzani is?
Yeah, honestly, I'd have no idea who you're talking about. So.
He is the guy at the boat sequence at the end who's like, "Hey, don't kill him. Just like get him to stop." And he's the one who kills Kronstein.
He sucked to the villain because like he's telling everyone. I mean, to be fair, he's strangely honourable in the way that he's telling everyone to abandon ship, but he's staying on the ship.
Yeah,
and just allows himself to get caught on fire and then fall in the ocean.
It's really strange. But we do get introduced to another, the main villain. I guess you could say actually he's not the main villain. He's more the henchman, oddly enough.
Yeah, number 1 is the main villain, even though we don't really see who he is at this point.
Even that, like I would argue that Rosa Klebb is more of a villain, but
oh yeah, definitely. This guy's just the muscle.
We get introduced to Donald Grant, which doesn't sound as menacing as Red Grant, which he gets referred to as. Red Grant's the one that kills Bond with he garrots him. That's a right phrase, right? Yeah, I think so. Garrot.
Garrots him, yeah.
But you get a good impression at the very least for the very beginning of it. Like, this dude killed Bond. Okay, it's not Bond, but he'll kill somebody, and he's got a good chance of killing Bond. He looks menacing. He seems like he's a physical match for him instead of a guy with no hands, like the last film. Yeah, I like Grant. They've got a great sequence where Morzani is showing off the training sequence, the training grounds to Rosa Klebb, which is really kind of ridiculous because it's like people dodging flamethrowers and as if it's like a youth center or something. Well, that implies there's flamethrowers at youth centers. I don't think that there is, but you know what I mean. People are playing these weird like dodging games and there's a shooting range to it, whatever. But Grant is standing there and she hits him with brass knuckles and whatever. So he's built solid. You guys think about Grant? We'll get more into like the stuff that happens later on the train as time goes on. But
I really enjoyed him. I enjoyed. Go ahead.
It's like, yeah, he's a good, like, I'd say, I guess, primary antagonist in terms of just the person that actually interacts the most with Bond out of this. I think that the fact that he doesn't talk too much throughout the movie works, because I think it's probably for the best in most cases that the Bond villain is a little bit more of the silent but deadly type. And I think he fits that bill quite nicely.
He's like a fart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I think he really felt like a match for Bond. And by one point in this movie, I actually genuinely said, oh shit, even though I know this movie comes out in 1963 and we're still doing Bond films, like that's how convincing he was by the end of this film.
So he's played by Robert Shaw, who you might know as Quint from Jaws. They look drastically different, those two parts.
So. Yeah.
I didn't know that for a while as a kid. I was just like, this is just some guy. Never seen him before in any other movie. Because in the span of, it's like 13 years, I think, between them. It might be only like 10 or so. Forget when Jaws comes out. But it seems like he ages like 30 years. Like, he looks like he's in his 30s here. And then he looks like he's in his late 50s or something in the other movie, Jaws. Red Grant's great. We'll get more into him. But we're introduced to another one of the villains, Kronstein. Love that name. He's playing chess on this great set. They've got this big chessboard and whatever, and they've got this funny little moment where this guy hands him a drink, and it's got a little like, hey, you're needed by Spectre napkin underneath it. And Kronstein, the way he gets rid of it is he just pretends to wipe his mouth with it and then rips it up. And he's like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to beat this guy and, I got to leave. So enough with that. We get into the whole idea that he has planned out this whole entire film. He has set up the stealing of the Lecter and passing it over between Tatiana and Bond. And she's going to be set up and he's going to be set up. And He mentions on this that they get into this whole idea that, well, isn't this just going to be an obvious trap? And he's like, yeah, it is an obvious trap. But as, my reading of the British is, they're going to take this as a challenge and they're going to go into that. So, Callum, as our resident Brit, would you take this challenge as an obvious trap and go along with it? Would you see it that way?
I mean, I guess that I would see it as an obvious trap because it's the way they were discussing this decoding machine, the Lecter. It just makes it seem like, okay, you don't get hold of these things very often, and so being presented one in such an incredible opportunity by essentially the way they describe it later on about this woman who just wants to leave, defect from Russia, join the British Secret Service, but only because she's fallen in love with a guy that she's never met before, makes it seem like, okay, that's clearly an obvious ruse. But I also buy into the idea, especially in the 1960s, in a Britain that's like still reveling from the fact that we won 2 world wars and all that other like brave stuff. It's just the idea of like, oh, we can walk into these traps and we'll walk out and foil them anyway because we're the British and we're the greatest at that point. So I totally buy that's the sort of vibe you would have between the British spies in the 1960s, particularly Bond, because of his own particular arrogance towards this stuff.
I, for one, could never imagine a country being so full of itself.
Never, right? Never.
Yeah.
So Kronstein's another one of our villains. We get introduced. I mean, it's the beginning of the movie, and within 3 scenes of the film or something, we got like 6 villains already. Because we've got not only Red Grant, we've got Morzeny, we've got this whole Spectre training ground type of thing. We've got Kronstein, but they're talking to Blofeld, number 1, who we don't know as Blofeld at this point. We're gonna get to know him throughout a couple different films. He is played by 2 different people. Somebody's doing a voiceover that's, I don't know the name, I didn't bother looking that up. And the actual hands is Anthony Dawson, who was Professor Dent in the last movie. They were just like, hey, can you just be the hands for the next couple films?
You think that's how they pump these films out so quickly?
Kinda, yeah. They use a lot of the same crew, not the same director, but a lot of the same directors come back throughout different films. Terrence Young does more than one. John Glenn is a producer and editor and all this other kind of stuff, director. So they do kind of pump them out pretty quickly. And if there's just like, hey, like let's get Dawson back, he could just be the hands. Nobody's going to go, that's Anthony Dawson's hands. It's not like these days where people go like super crazy over those things. Blofeld doesn't say or do much in this, but you get a good presence about him too. I'm a huge fan of Blofeld. This is like my favorite Blofeld by far. He's calculated. Well, Thunderball might be a little bit better, but he's calculating. He talks about the fish as being like, what we do here is we're the fish that's on the side that's not getting into the fight until the other 2 have worn themselves out, and then this one just strikes and attacks. What do you guys think about Blofeld?
I mean, he's the leader of the whole operation. He clearly commands a lot of respect. The other 2, Klebb and Kronstein, are clearly very fearful of him, and they don't want to screw up in any situation, and they're very confident they won't do it. So I think it does a good enough job to establish him as the head honcho Spectre, and he's the one that's pulling all the strings here, but you don't see enough of him to make him feel like he's at the moment a huge threat to Bond as an individual. But he's clearly you clearly get the sense from this one, okay, Bond's not done with this guy needs to come down before Bond can actually defeat Spectre.
And I love a good mastermind, so I'm all for it. Big fan.
You guys getting Inspector Gadget vibes of Dr. Claw?
Yeah.
I never really watched Inspector Gadget, so I can't really say that side of it. But
you should rectify that.
I'm getting vibes of Dr. Evil before you actually see Dr. Evil in the Austin Powers movies.
Yep, Dr. Evil based off of Blofeld.
Because he's got the cat as well. Yeah, so
Mr.
that's obviously the iconic thing of it.
Yep, it's
Does the cat have a name?
Nope, they've never said the cat's name. Funny enough. They actually imply that there's multiple cats, too, which is really weird. I mean, when we get to Diamonds Are Forever, everything goes off the fucking rails. Like, I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say about that movie, because it's fucking bonkers. But the cat is such a weird choice. Like, you got this guy who's very clearly this cold, calculating, evil person, and he's like, "Let me pet a kitty." Like, it's just kind of like
it's a support animal.
Yeah,
His
it's
emotional support animal.
old-timey emotional support animal for him doing his terrible spy game kind of tactics and whatever.
Again, it just shows that his hands actually work.
Hey, that's the whole point. They're just like, all we need to make sure is we know we got a guy with hands, so let's just show his hands, and then that's it. You know. We're also introduced to Rosa Klebb. Rosa Klebb is great. She is just this, like, hard-faced raisin of a woman that, like, you get this feeling that she got chewed up and spit out and figured out a way to rise her way through the ranks and everything. She's a bitch. And
but in the best way.
Yeah, like, I fucking love her character so much. She is one of my favorite villains in the whole franchise.
Oh yeah, she was the strongest villain out of this entire movie by far. She was the one that really weaved the narrative together because she was the one that was originally part of the like the Russian
Smersh.
Yeah, exactly. And so she's the one that can get Tatiana to, like, get involved in this entire scheme unknowingly to her, because she thinks that she's working for the Russians, and obviously she's Klebb working for Spectre instead. She's very vicious. I love the bit where she's terrified. I know this is getting, like, towards the end, but I know we're flying around all over the place, but we're towards the end where she thinks that she's going to get killed by number one, and so she's terrified, but then she sees the thing happen, and so she knows that she's got one more opportunity. So yeah, she's a very, very, like, vicious. Oh, actually, my favorite part of her is that when she uses the brass knuckles on Dent in the training center, she just punches him in the gut with some brass knuckles just to make sure that he's unflinching towards pain and stuff like that. So, yeah, he'll do.
Yeah.
That's
great villain, and I believe the inspiration for Frau from Austin Powers.
Yeah, Frau Farbissina, the open the doors kind of woman. She is also a character that they try to replicate with another character down the line, and they don't do as well. Irma Bunt just doesn't land as well as Rosa Klebb does. And I've always been curious about this opinion. I see some people that are like, oh, this is a guarantee, and some people that are like, what the hell are you talking about? So, do you guys think that she's a lesbian?
I don't know if it necessarily matters, but
it doesn't really matter. But it's just one of those things I've seen people argue about.
I think a lot of people will get that from the interaction that she has earlier on with
Tatiana.
Her first interaction with Tatiana that we see. It's very. I'm not saying that, like, she's strictly a lesbian, but I'm not saying that she doesn't use those sort of tactics to intimidate other women.
I see a lot of people that try to make the argument that because she says you're a fine-looking woman, that means that she's a lesbian, and it's like, that's not necessarily true. Like, you can appreciate the beauty of, somebody without having that as your sexual preference or anything.
Yeah, I think it's the idea that, and again, this is maybe just of the time, and maybe this is just my perspective, but I think it's the idea of, well, the main role of Bond girls in this period of time is that they're very attractive. Mainly just, like, very attractive, very just into Bond, obviously, straight away and stuff like that. The fact that she is not very attractive, she's old, she's of that. She's not a typical of, like, what you'd expect for a Bond girl or a femme fatale character, and so people just say, okay, she's a lesbian then.
Right. It's kind of just
and also it's probably the fact that she's a woman in power as well, and so people just say, oh, she's a woman in power. She clearly is, like, she's clearly a lesbian. And that's all right.
Like, Bond doesn't bed her. She doesn't try to seduce Bond. She's not typically attractive. All this other kind of stuff. So people are like, oh, she's gay then. And it's like, I've never liked that philosophy of that. Like, there's nothing at all that points in that direction for the character. And there's nothing that, like, it wouldn't matter at all to the story. So for anybody who's wondering.
Well, quite frankly, I'm surprised, given some of the other things in this movie and this franchise, Bond didn't try to seduce her. Like, yeah, my penis can solve your problems.
It works for Tatiana. Well, let's talk about Tatiana because we get introduced to her with that whole idea of Rosa interviewing her. She talks that she used to be in the ballet, but she grew over regulation height, which I thought is a funny kind of line. And she is set up, I think, in a great way where she has no idea what's going on. As far as she knows, Rosa Klebb is this great Smersh general, and she's just got this task of like, hey, we're in the spy game. You need to be a spy instead of just like a clerk or whatever. You need to seduce this agent, and you need to do this whole thing with this Lecter and whatever. Of course, she has no idea about Spectre whatsoever, because why would she know? That's what Spectre is all about. And I like the interaction that she has where Klebb's like, you've had a couple of lovers, and what do you think about like this whole scenario? And she's like, well, if he's nice and whatever. And she's just sort of like, well, you're gonna fuck him or you're dead. And she's like, okay then. Kind of like, I guess that'll happen.
Yeah. I thought great Bond girl, fits the time perfectly. I thought she was pretty attractive. They're pretty dumb by the end of it, but like,
yeah, that happens to a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really, really despise that character.
Not
It's not that
surprised.
I despise the girl or anything like that. It's just the fact that she was so without any initiative whatsoever until the very, very end when she helps Bond. But the issue is that they don't tell a story of her falling in love with Bond.
Yeah, they skip that.
They really, really just overplay. She's in love with him basically from the first night they're together. From that point onwards, she's very, very just over the top of everything. And maybe that was just originally her acting, but they don't show the point where it transitions from her just acting to seduce Bond because under her orders by the Russians and then actually falling in love with him. It's very, very, very loose. And so I can't get invested in her character because her character is again like Honey Rider in the previous one. She's essentially just a body.
It's the 60s, though. They probably
Yeah,
were genuinely like, of course she fell in love with him. We don't need to give you a reason.
I
Attraction
understand.
is love.
I understand the context of the time, but it doesn't mean that I have to like it.
Yeah,
That's fair.
they're missing at least 2 scenes.
Yeah,
They need a scene where she goes, oh wait, like this guy's like, I actually kind of like this guy. And then they need a scene where they do something to transition it as, oh no, I'm falling in love with this guy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know you say like it's the 60s, and again, these Bond girls in that point in time weren't given a huge amount of character depth, but it's not like no movies in the 1960s or before had female characters that had absolutely no, had no character development or no real story behind them or anything like that. Other movies were doing it, so I'm not going to give the Bond movies a pass just because we're supposed to think, oh, Bond girls are just there to be hot and sleep with Bond, and that's it.
I don't know. I kind of feel like in this era they were.
Well, maybe they were for the Bond movies, but that's for me is a negative for the movies. I'm not going to say along the lines of, oh, but okay, so that's what they intended to do at that point. So okay, I'll give it a pass. Then it's awful to me. It's terrible.
I agree.
I don't mind the Bond girls being used for like them being attractive and them also like sleeping with Bond and stuff like that. I don't mind that being obviously a huge part of what their character is evolved. But I'd like to see a character apart from that side of it as well.
Yeah, this same sort of character, like the same vibe, is done better in other movies, I think. They have a scene, the first initial seduction scene where she pops into the room and she's naked and she's under the bed sheets and everything. That is actually a scene that they use when they're auditioning new Bonds all the time. Like they've done that over the years. They're just like, do the scene from Russia with Love. And they try to see who has great chemistry with different actresses and everything.
Oh, can I tell you who doesn't? Sean Connery.
You mean you don't think you don't buy into the line, I think my mouth is too big? Oh, it's just the right size. For me, that is. It's terrible.
It's just throughout the entire thing, they have zero chemistry with each other. But you don't get any impression that they're actually in love with each other.
That's good for one scene, though. I really like when he's got the camera and he's like, tell me about the Lecter and whatever, and she's like, oh, like, well, you just want to talk about that, and he's like, no, like we're not going to be on company time, like let's just talk about that for now, and then later on, well, whatever. And she goes, I wrote the lines down because I laughed a lot at it. She's like, the mechanism is, oh, James, will you make love to me all the time in England? And he goes, day and night, go on about the mechanism.
Oh yeah, he was good in that regard. It's just a case.
I love that. She's like, yeah, I'll fuck you a lot. Anyway, so talk about the Lecter.
Well, I kind of get that because he's on task, like we said earlier. Like he knows this is a trap, and he thinks that she's part of the trap. He initially thinks that she's part of Spectre.
Right.
So he's just going along with it because he knows that he can deal with her if she does try and turn him down the line. But it's just a case of, I don't see again, you don't see the part where either of them start to feel something different about it. So yeah, that's why I think it's a weak relationship.
Well, he doesn't know about Spectre until towards the end, but he knows something's up, and he's like, all right, the Russians are trying to screw us, that kind of thing. So he's just flat. There's no reason for him to think that she's positive in any way, because she's definitely a Russian agent. Later on, he's got other Russian agents that he'll kind of have a similar vibe to, just like, well, you're the Russians, so whatever. But I like what they do in these movies for the time, where it's like, yeah, the Russians are the bad guys according to the British mentality around then, but we're not going to make them the bad guys necessarily. Like, there's going to be bad Russians, and there's bad Brits, and there's bad Americans, and there's bad whatever, but like, it's not just, oh, Bond takes down Russia every movie. Spectre's in there, and at the end of the day, with this one, Tatiana, she is a villain at the beginning of it because she's just a Russian agent. So by the fact of being a different country, she's against him. But at no point in the movie is she actually a villain, because we know from the start that she's not a part of the plan. So she's kind of like, you don't worry about that she's going to turn on him at any point, I guess that's kind of a positive, kind of a negative, because then you don't have to have the whole like, oh, what's going to happen next? It's not going to happen, Other Bond girls, we got the return of Sylvia Trench.
I thought this was good.
Was supposed to originally be in practically every movie. They were going to make her this running gag where Bond perpetually just keeps going back to Sylvia and called away, like how in this one I'll be there in an hour. We make that an hour and a half. I'm just reviewing an old case. And they just decided to, let's just cut it at that one. Just make it 2. I like Sylvia, and I wouldn't have minded if she would have been in more movies, particularly Tomorrow Never Dies. There's a part we'll get into that. We get into that movie. But what do you guys think about Sylvia returning?
I thought it was good, and I thought it was very funny, and Moneypenny's lines made it all the better.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that she's like his consistent side piece back at home, and then he goes out to all these foreign places and he just sleeps with everyone that he sees, and then comes back and he doesn't stick around with the girls too long. I was going to ask this because obviously I didn't do too much like further looking into. So he has a scar on his body. Mm-hmm. Did Honey do that to him? It's
implied because
because it seems like he left.
Yeah,
because obviously she brings up the fact that he went to Jamaica, so it's clearly there's obviously the run from Dr. No into this one. So I would have thought that Bond just decided to leave at some point, and Honey just gave him like a nick when he was going, and then he's just got a scar on his body now because of that.
Yeah, she says something about the scar or whatever, and he mentions, I forget the line exactly, but he says something about that he's never going to turn his back on a woman again. So it's kind of like, yeah, Honey Rider is just like, where the fuck you going? And stabs him, I guess, which is kind of an unceremonious way to write off the last Bond girl. Just Bond sleeps with her, leaves, and she's old news, and he goes back for Sylvia, but he just leaves Honey.
Well, yeah, to be fair, she is based in Jamaica, so I guess it is slightly
that's true.
Probably slightly challenging.
introducing more characters and going back to the same elements and everything like that. We've got, for my next miracle, where Bond throws his hat again and he sees Moneypenny and M glaring at him, and this does a lot of the character work that we'll see going on, of like Bond being just this, showman kind of arrogant jerk, and Moneypenny and M just being like, oh, God damn it. Like, kind of. Again, love Moneypenny, love M. Only positives for me on those ends.
Yeah, they were great. They play their roles particularly well in like just explaining the situation. Their relationship with Bond is consistent from the two movies. So Moneypenny, they still have that light-hearted flirting, but it is obviously clearly more of a friendship side of things. And M is still, obviously, again, there's still that respect there, but he's still obviously getting a little bit under M's skin, and M is still trying to control him more than like Bond ever wants to be controlled.
The line, Moneypenny, I'll never look at another woman, was the funniest line in the movie to me, just because we know who he is.
And we get introduced to actual Q, not Major Boothroyd from the last movie. It's Desmond Llewellyn, who would go on to play the character in, I think it's 17 Bond films, all the way through The World's Not Enough. He is one of the most amazing parts of this franchise. I miss Desmond Llewellyn's Q so much. I do like the new Q that we have as something different, but I absolutely love Q, and we don't get like proper Q until the next movie, but he is a major step up, and the gadget in this is a major step up, obviously, too, because last movie we had a gun. Whereas with this one, we get this this briefcase that has this delightfully simple and useful methodology to it, where, if you open it up the wrong way, which the way that normally people would open up a briefcase, it's got this tear gas canister that'll go off, which is magnetically attached. You've got the 50 gold sovereigns, which I always thought was a really weird thing to add into there. Why does he need 50 gold sovereigns?
I guess if he ever needs to barter with somebody, or like get involved in a casino game, a high stakes casino game, or something like that.
Just a weird thing for me, because it's like, here's a tear gas canister, and here's a knife, and here's a foldable, collapsible rifle. And here's some money. Like, that's just always struck me as weird.
The actual reason for it is that it's needed for the final scene. So
yeah, But I love this little gadget. This is a big, big thumbs up for me.
You know, I love the most out of anything with these gadgets, especially everything that's Q's involved. And obviously, I haven't watched all the Bond movies, but one thing I'm looking forward to is the phrase that he always would start this off with, which is a simple, ordinary briefcase. It's just the idea of oh, it just seems like a simple, ordinary briefcase. But wait, there's ammunition in the bottom of it, and there's a knife inside of it, and if you open it the wrong way, it's going to explode in your face and all that. And the best part about looking at this, knowing that it's a Bond movie, is just waiting to see all of those different elements being used throughout the movie. And they kind of all get really saved until the final fight with Dent, like most of them do. But there's still little bits and pieces of it, like scattered around the movie.
With Grant, you mean?
Oh, Grant, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the briefcase was nice. It's simple. It comes in handy at the end. And obviously, they'd build upon it in the future. But for this one movie, I think this was perfect.
And we haven't quite gotten into the range yet we do in the next movie, of the, like, Bond and Q kind of playing around with each other sort of thing. The bring this back in pristine order kind of line that we usually get. But this is the start of a better relationship, because there's just more chemistry between Desmond Llewellyn and Connery. And then Desmond Llewellyn more, and Dalton, and everybody else that goes along with this. So I mean, we don't see too much other stuff when it comes to the gadget side of things. We'll loop back around to that, but going through some different notes of mine that I've got here, we get a retelling of that whole shot from Dr. No, where he comes into the airport and he's clearly being followed or whatever, and we set up this idea of this code phrase of can I borrow something to light my lighter? The matches and everything. I use a lighter. Oh, that's better still. Well, until it fails. And later on in the movie, there's this really good thing that I really, really like that I didn't catch back in the days, just when I wasn't I was younger and not paying attention to little things. I love that you get that set up, you get a reintroduction of it later on with some other people, and you get this good payoff where Grant is on the train and he's being reflected in the window, and you can see that he can hear Bond and the other agent doing this exchange. So that way later on, you don't have to hear the dialogue, but you know that Grant is doing that same exchange, taking over that agent spot, and then doing the same thing to Bond. I really, really like that touch. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, it shows that he's obviously intelligent. Like Grant knows that he can pick up on this subtle exchange between Bond and some other people that obviously agents, or at least like people that have a similar relationship, and so he can use it against them. So obviously the main thing about Grant is that he is incredibly strong and tough, and so that's like he's a physical match for Bond, but he's also intelligent and sneaky, and he's very calculating with his own kills he does in the movie as well, in order to like carry out the plan that that Spectre have put together to the letter.
Any thoughts on that, Rob?
Oh no, I got worried there. I thought my connection died. No, I agree with Callum. Like, it's just all of this coming together. I like the development of the code phrase. I like how we're gonna start to be rewarded for paying attention to more details. It's like I said, for me, as my first viewing of the second Bond film after just watching Dr. No for the first time, this was like leagues better.
Talking about better, we got to talk about Kerim Bey.
The best part of this entire movie.
He's so good.
He's funny, he's charismatic, you feel that he's an equal to Bond in every way, really. They do a few like scenes early on where he seems like his life is under danger, but he doesn't die, so that's obviously a good setup for what happens later. But I feel watching it, I felt connected to him in the way that I didn't feel connected to Quarrel. Because Quarrel was just like, again, it was just a prop, really. I mean, he was a nice guy, but he was mainly just like used as a prop. Whereas this guy feels like a fully fleshed out character.
Yeah, a lot of fun with this character. I got a kick out of watching him interact with Bond, and it's just been really strange for me to see how there's a lot of cheekiness in these films. I guess going into stuff like this, you just expect explosions and sex and not as much of the cheekiness, but I really have enjoyed a lot of these elements, especially because these movies are pretty long. By the time I got to the end of this one, I was like, a lot has developed, and we're still, 20 minutes out, and I still feel like we haven't wrapped up everything yet.
So, some notes about Kerim Bey. He is his actor. This is one of those unfortunate scenarios where he died right after making this film because he had cancer during this film. He was part of a movie called The Conqueror in the 50s.
Oh, that's the John Wayne one, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. That movie filmed in Utah where they had done these nuclear tests, and they had transported all this radioactive sand and dirt and whatever, not having any idea that this was just riddled with radiation. 41% of the people that worked on that movie, 91 people in total, died at some point from cancer that they developed from that film, which is just absolutely terrible. And he knew that he was dying when they were filming this, and they were going to recast him. And he had said, like, please let me finish doing this film. I want this to be my last movie, and I want to make sure that I've got this money for my family. So there's, like, scenes where he's bright and lively, and the dude's on his deathbed, which is, like, all that more of a testament to be like, damn, what a good actor, you know? Like,
Yeah, he was so good.
Wow, that's tragic.
he died before I think the film had even been released, if I remember correctly. And his son plays a character in a different movie as a means to be like, hey, like, you know, your dad was like, great, let's bring you into the mix. He's in License to Kill. He plays well, we'll get into it when we get into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, real sad about that. He's such a great character in so many ways. I love the his mistress or whatever, just like, Ali Karimbe, like, come here, like, fuck me, and he's just like, all right, and then he narrowly ditches, not ditches, oh my god, what's the word I'm thinking of? Escapes the limpet mine. He's got these good little quips here and there. He's this fun kind of character. He mentions, I made a joke about it at the beginning of this when they're in the train and he's got the guy tied up and he's like, I've had a fascinating life. Would you like to hear about it? The guy's just like, and he goes, oh, you would. Great supporting character.
That's really sad now that you mentioned that, and also scary that they just played around with radiation like that.
They're just like, we need more dirt. Just get it from that place.
Well, as we saw from Dr. No, they had absolutely no idea what radiation actually did at this point in time. So
no, it could not just be washed off.
Just shower a little bit longer. Extra 10 seconds to wash off. You know,
it did the perfect thing that you can do with any supporting character, especially in the Bond movies, is that it made you care about when he died.
Yeah,
you hate the guy that killed him, and that's just like what you wanted. That's what you want to get out of this. The thing, like I said about the Quarrels thing, it's just like I felt somewhat sympathetic for him when he obviously like dies in that movie, but this one it just felt like, oh my god, I really enjoyed this character, and I hate the fact that Grant took him away from us. Because it's very obvious that Grant is the one that kills him in the way that they shoot it. So they don't leave it any room for interpretation, which in one way is good. I actually think that was a benefit of that thing.
Yeah, the train, I don't know what you would call him. He's not the train conductor, but the guy, the attendant, whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, they killed each other. And it's like, yeah, well, one's got a knife in his back. I'm pretty sure it didn't happen. But sure, why not? You know. Let's talk about the Gypsy Girl fight.
You talk about how they settle things in the gypsy way.
This is one of those elements that doesn't quite hold up as well in some ways because, I mean, different cultures do things differently, sure, but they set this up as these two women are in love with this one guy and they're going to fight to determine who gets them. And it turns into this whole big action sequence, which has this song, the 007 song, that's not the main Bond theme, that happens in some different movies, and I hate it. That bum 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 bum. I hate that song so much. And then it ends up being Bond's like, oh, can you because he saves the guy's life that runs this whole gypsy camp tribe. I don't know what you call it. Yeah. And he's like, you know, can you stop the girl fight? And he's like, yeah, okay, you pick. So it's kind of implied that they double team Bond. Like he has a threesome with the two women that are in love with this other guy, and
that's it. I mean, that's what would you expect? Anything else from this situation?
But what did I just say earlier? Bond's magic penis. It does the trick.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to just like look at this whole situation, which is, I mean, they originally like they drive to the gypsy compound or camp or whatever you want to call it, and they think that then because they're going there, they're not being tailed, and they are being tailed by the Russians. So it's Benz, is it? Not Benz. It's one of these other like paid assassins they have, and so they go into the gypsy compound. And they have this like good 3 to 5 minute belly dance sequence, which is just there to titillate people, and then it just turns into a war zone. And it's like, I don't ever imagine Bond being in these circumstances. It just feels weird because he's a secret agent. Like, what secret agent actually goes into open warfare and it's just like that, like shooting people with guns all over the place where there's like fire flying around and all that other stuff. It just felt so Lord of the Rings, not James Bond, really.
Oh, he shoots
And
his
then-
gun way more times than his gun has the capacity for.
Well, just the idea of like how many people does he actually like? Do we see him kill in Doctor No? It's like about like half a dozen, maybe at most.
Let me
Maybe
look up that
slightly more, but
information.
but they're all split out a little bit. And it's all like every kill kind of matters almost. Whereas this one, he's just shooting people randomly, just shooting random Russian henchmen, and it just feels like it doesn't feel like what I'd expect Bond to do. I expect, like, obviously, the gypsies to fight to defend their land and stuff like that, but Bond's just right in the middle of it, just shooting people. And he seems to kill a few gypsies as well, because he doesn't really seem to care about what's going on.
Yeah, why?
Like there's
They
at
got
one
in the way
point
of
where
his
he
gun.
like, yeah, which is that one point where he sets fire to one of the caravans, and then he just pushes it towards just a group of people, which is a mixture of both gypsies and Russians, and just like, okay, Bond just doesn't, as long as he survives, it doesn't matter.
So in Dr. No, according to TheGuardian.com, Bond kills 4 people, and in From Russia with Love, he kills 11.
Yeah, so it's a
All
bit
right,
of a
more than double.
Yeah, it's actually 00 plus and 7 more.
There you go.
Looking at this list, this is just a little bit of interesting things. This is a good indicator of how things change over time. So he kills 4 in the first film, 11 in the second one. He kills 9 in Goldfinger, 20 in Thunderball, only 5 eventually in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. We get up to a point where he kills 47 in GoldenEye. That's the highest amount.
Well,
Not the highest amount of deaths per film, though. That is You Only Live Twice, oddly enough. If you count that full, like, everybody kills people, not just Bond kills. Apparently, in You Only Live Twice, 175 people die.
wow.
That's crazy.
Jesus.
Pretty sure I know which scene that is, but we'll get to that in a couple movies.
Yeah.
Um,
But like you say, essentially there's this big the gypsy fight, and they win it, and Bond gets to decide which one of the girls should rightfully marry the if it was like the chief's son or something like that. And then he decides, well, there's only one way to settle it. That's who fucks me best. And then she just and then we just see him being like patched up by them, and then he leaves, and we have no idea who he chose.
He doesn't care. He won. We just established this.
well, isn't there that shot where they're leaving? I think like one of the women is standing next to thing. I think it might be like one of them gets picked or something. I don't remember for sure.
Yeah, I'm guessing he was cool with the whole circumstances there as well.
Yeah, just bang this other guy, and then he can let me know which one I should have as a wife or something. One of the women in that the gypsy girl fight is Martine Beswick. It's the actress's name. She's erroneously referred to as Martin Beswick in the credits, and she returns in Thunderball as a different character. And I like Martine. Beautiful woman. She's way better in Thunderball, by the way. Here's a random note that I have. Bond eats green figs, yogurt, and very black coffee, which is just disgusting to me. I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's fitting of the location, like around about like Turkey, Greece area. That's kind of the stuff that you would be eating. So it's culturally fitting.
Ugh, not my fan.
But would you eat it, Callum?
I wouldn't eat it, no, but like I
Okay.
wouldn't go to Turkey either. So it's just,
I'd be like, can you replace the green figs with a different type of fruit and with the yogurt with something else, like eggs and pancakes and whatever, and replace the black coffee with orange juice? Just terrible. But we get a thing here that we should talk about that is on the music side of things. The Bond theme playing again when it shouldn't be playing, where he's snooping around for bugs in the hotel room and it's just not the right tone.
I mean, we didn't really even talk too much about the opening theme, about the actual like music that was playing for it, because it's just another instrumental.
Yeah, instrumental version of the From Russia with Love theme, which comes back at the end.
Yeah, and it's just like, just not. again, there's nothing hugely wrong with it, but it's hard to be iconic when there's no lyrics attached to it. But you do get the first real indications of what would be the running trope for these opening sequences, which is just shots of women and the credits rolling across their bodies. That's basically what the Bond thing would be up until Daniel Craig really takes over.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, but I like it though. It's exactly what the character has always been in my mind, so it works.
Another quick note that I've got, once when I was with M in Tokyo, we had an interesting experience. Thank you, Miss Moneypenny, the end of y'all. I thought that was great. I like with Tanya, as she likes to be called, not Tatiana. Their cover story, they've got that they're a married couple, and she's like, "Well, we don't have any kids," and he's like, "No," and she's like, "Well, not even a little boy," and he's just like, "Niet." She's like, "No, I'm not having a fucking kid with you." Eventually, we lead to the point where we're on the train. We're on the Orient Express. It's this big, everybody knows the Orient Express.
You want to talk about the 5-minute train montage that we get?
Yeah, lots of trains.
Okay, like these movies are good, but they are far, far too long. I really do feel like some things can be shaved off, and this would be one of them. I don't understand why we're just dragging these movies out. Maybe that was just a thing back in the 60s, because I know some American movies have these issues as well, where it's just, why do all these things need to be 2 hours long? We could shave half an hour.
I think they're relishing in the locale type of thing. Where, because that's a draw for some of these movies back then, where it's like, oh, he's on the Orient Express. Let's show you the Orient Express. He's in Turkey. Let's show you this kind of thing. Let's have discussions about grilled sole, which I felt like eating fish afterwards. So I ended up getting tilapia, tilapia the other day. So it's just like, oh, there's no grilled sole, but I'll have tilapia instead.
Yeah, so they get to the point where we obviously talked about earlier, where Grant gets onto the train because he takes out the agent that's supposed to be meeting Bond. I can't remember what city. Was it Belgrade? Or was that past that point?
I'm blanking on which one.
Yeah, well, essentially, it's in an Eastern Bloc city, and obviously Grant gets on. He pretends to be as another British agent based in that city, and they do the bit where they like go to dinner instead. And he orders conspicuously to Bond this fact that he orders red wine with the fish.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's just like the big, like, that's a real cultural no-no, really. You never order red wine with fish. But the reason why he does it is very, well, from what my perspective want to see, is quite ingenious. It's the fact that he's going to drug Tanya's drink. And so he wants to make sure there's no chance that he accidentally takes a drink of his own. So if he's got a red glass and they've got a white one, it means that he can tell that he won't drink it accidentally or anything along those lines.
Yeah, it's a really good little subtle thing going on there.
Yeah, and so he's an intelligent guy.
And he overplays this part with the like, old man, whatever. Oh, here you are, old man, whatever. I like the switch up too, where Bond doesn't trust him, and then he does. And then that's his downfall. Is he's just like, all right, like, how did you drug the girl? What'd you give her? Whatever. And he's like, yeah, well, my escape plan only has the two of us. You know, she's a Russian agent. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, he thinks that she's with Spectre at this point. So
he's like, that makes sense. Yeah, let's screw over the Russian girl because she's trying to screw us over and whatever. And then he lets his guard down for just a second, and that's when Grant clocks him over the back of the head. And
what did he hit him with?
His gun.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, just the handle of his gun.
Yeah. And I do like the little switch up of Bond being held at gunpoint, and they do the whole thing of like the monologue, you know, let me tell you the whole plan because you can appreciate it before I kill you kind of a thing. But I like when he oversells the part of like, I can give you this money for this, whatever. We can pay you double and whatever, and I'll give you these 50 gold sovereigns or whatever. Yeah, I have more in my briefcase. I'll just get it real quick. And he's like, no. I'll open it because like you're really excited to open up this briefcase that probably has some kind of a trap. I'll do it. And that's the trap. It's like, damn, that's good, you know?
Very good.
Yeah, it's a clever way of doing it.
So they have their fight sequence.
So much better than any fight sequence in Doctor No.
This is great.
This was the part where I audibly said, "Oh shit," because it was just a really, really intense fight sequence, and for a minute, Bond is actually struggling, and hey, maybe he's not as infallible.
This is one of those things that they try to replicate in other movies here and there.
You can kind of tell by some of the camera cuts and stuff like that it's probably not the same actors doing everything in there, because you just see like shots of the back of their heads and stuff like that, so you know that's like a stuntman's been brought in, or like a trained fighter has been brought in to try and make it look a lot more realistic. But it's still it fits together very well.
No camera cut is as egregious as the one in the beginning of Doctor No, so that's an improvement right there.
Actually, I think there's only one shot that's not them.
All right.
Yeah. I don't remember which shot it is, but I kind of remember hearing something about that like that they wanted to do that, and that it's mostly them.
Maybe it was just like an assumption and stuff like that, just because like when I assume that I see like just shots of the back of their heads and stuff like that, I just assume they must have traded out here.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they would show their faces, because that's kind of seems to be the rule in cinema at the very least.
I think it might be the shot where like one of them gets flipped or something, because obviously that's more of a stuntman thing. But yeah, this is a great little, just like, it's high stakes, but it's a low environment. And in other movies, we're going to see these like giant explosions and the cars all over the place and 1,000 people shooting at Bond or whatever. And this is just two guys fighting in a little carriage, and it ends up landing pretty damn well compared to a lot of these other more bombastic things.
See, but I almost prefer this because it's really, mano a mano, like, I'm going to take you down, and I'm going to prove that, you're not as great as you think you are. I like the part where he says, I enjoyed manipulating you and watching the great James Bond run around like a fool. It seems very personal, even though it's not, and I think that's something you can only get when it's a one-on-one fight.
Yeah, there's more character when it's the two people rather than if it's two people shooting at each other from far away and making it like less personable. But he kills Grant, and then here's one of my flaws about the film. On the action side of things, that feels like the end of the movie.
It should be the end.
That's what I was saying. Like, I looked at the time, and there was still 20 minutes to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't mind the thing they do in the Venice Hotel with Kleb. We'll talk about it in a little while. That's a nice little, just like a little, just not to say funny, but it's a little like just a little extra added thing at the end of it where you just think, oh my god, there's just one final twist. But the stuff they throw in here just feels like, okay, we've doubled our budget from the previous year. What the fuck can we think of to put at the end of this movie to make it really exciting and dramatic at the end? You'll have like helicopters and boat chases and all this other stuff. It just feels like it's unnecessary. It's gratuitous almost.
I think that they should have had, like, for instance, the helicopter scene. Like, that shouldn't even really be in it necessarily. But like the boat chase or the helicopter scene should have came before they got on the train. Like the train should be we've gotten past the hurdles. Oh crap, Grant is here, kind of a thing. As opposed to being like, well, we got rid of the bad guy. Now we just need to go through these extra little things to get to the end. Because you're like, all right, well, he's just going to blow up the helicopter. He's just going to blow up the boat. It's whatever,
It was just the levels of absurdity of it. When the helicopter's dropping grenades on top of a flower truck and the flower truck doesn't go up. And the fact that Tanya's in the back completely exposed to all this fire that's going around and she's completely untouched afterwards. And then for some reason, like, even though it seems like they've been dropping grenades and they've got some sort of ammunition on the helicopter, they decide to just try and gore him with the helicopter repeatedly. It's just like, helicopter just flying low, just trying to knock James Bond out with the actual thing. And then go to drop the grenade and he snipes the guy. The grenade drops into the helicopter. They blow up the helicopter. So I guess this was just an excuse to say, okay, we can blow up a helicopter in this movie. That's great.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. This is the stuff at the end with Kleb. I like that.
Very good.
She has this little thing where she's trying to steal the Lecter, just as like she's posing as a maid, and she's just gonna grab it and walk away. Like it's as simple as can be.
But what's this thing about this venom-tipped boot knife? Is what I've dubbed it essentially. It's just like because they show the thing of what's his name? The number
Kronstein.
5. Yeah, Kronstein getting killed by one of
by Morsany, who's on the boat. Yep. They cut really weird. Doesn't really make a lot of sense.
He's got a knife on the end of his boot, and he just kicks him in the shin with it, and it's got venom on it, and that's what kills him. And so Kleb puts it on, or wears her own version of it, and tries to repeatedly kick a Bond while he's holding her against the thing with the chair.
Yeah.
And then even though Tanya has already stopped Kleb and she's knocked the gun out of her hand when she's
still trying to decide who the fuck she should shoot.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels really weird that at that last moment she's having another crisis of conscience.
Yeah, that could have been done better, but I do like it. It's got a funny line too, where Bond just is like, "Oh, she had her kicks and whatever." Just one of those like, "Okay, you're Bond."
That's funny. I heard that and I went, "Tony likes that. That's a Tony."
Not my favorite Bond quip of the movie.
Yeah, that felt quite weak to me.
But it's one of those silly types of things. Like, why is that a thing? Why do they have that sticking out and whatever? They reference it in another movie too.
I like the shoe. I thought the shoe was like, again, it's cheeky, but that's been kind of the fun for me with these movies because they are a product of their time, and it's just like, I know I'm a spy. I'll just have this, knife in my shoe that I could just kick you with.
I do like, as far as on the gadget side of things with the shoe, I like how Blofeld is disappointed in that it takes a few seconds to kill Kronstein.
12 seconds, and he's like, all right, we need to tighten that up.
Yeah, I like that part quite a bit. It's like, we got to figure out a faster venom for that. That took way too long to kill Kronstein. And the movie ends with Bond tossing the film of the two of them having sex in the river or whatever it is, and we got the actual theme of the film, "From Russia with Love" by Matt Monro, which I really, really love.
Very good.
Yeah, I can't say that I paid a huge amount of attention to it because by the time the credits were on, I saw the credits, I kind of felt like just getting out. Not so much that I didn't enjoy it or stuff like that, but I just see the credits. I've been watching it for 2 hours. I kind of just want to move on at that point.
It would have been better if they would have swapped it with the instrumental at the beginning of it, which they learned their lesson, and they don't tend to do that anymore. Although they do it with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But I did want to say, with Kleb's death, the one bit of overacting I could have done without is her dying, because she just overacts it a little too much. But other than that, I thought, again, vast improvement over the utter fucking trash that the first one was. Now that I've seen the second one, I can already say, like, yeah, the first one was absolutely, like, too much, too excessive, too everything. This was a much more cleaned up version in some ways and a much more excessive in others. Like, I still want to get to the part where we shave time off of these movies. Tony, spoil something for me right now. Are we going to shave time off of these movies, or is this pretty much status quo?
Well, the Craig films get a lot longer.
The Craig films are better, though.
There's some of them are shorter, some of them are longer. It's I forget the average time, but Goldfinger, for instance, is an hour and 50 minutes.
We got 5 minutes off.
Some of them are they range around 2 hours usually.
Okay.
Thunderball's 2 hours and 12.
Fuck me.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service is 2 hours and 22.
What, with fucking George Lazenby? Well, what's George Lazenby for 2 hours and 22 minutes?
That's one of the reasons why it's one of my least favorites. Apparently, No Time to Die is going to be 2 hours and 43 minutes. I mean, I'm all
I mean, that's
for,
what modern
you know,
movies are nowadays. It's like
yeah.
it kind of comes with the territory.
The quickest is Quantum of Solace, and that's because they didn't have writers on that movie, and it shows. But, let's recap these 7 parts, because we've gone through the film. On the girl side of things, we've got Kleb. You can't really constitute. She's more just on the villain side. But we've got Tatiana. We got the gypsies. We've got Sylvia Trench. We got Moneypenny. There are better ones, but there are worse ones. I like Tatiana, but she could have been written a little bit better. And I like Trench popping back up, but yeah, bit part kind of thing. Overall, what are you guys thinking about Tanya?
Thumbs up for me. I thought she was great. She's a bit of an airhead, and like Callum said, unmotivated toward until the very, very end. But I thought she fit the bill as a Bond girl very well, and I was a big fan of the Gypsies, so thumbs up for me.
Yeah, it's a significant thumbs down for me on this side of it. It's no initiative, no character, no real purpose other than. I mean, I think the issue is that the whole crux of the movie is based around her relationship with Bond, and I think that is the weakest part of the entire movie. And if that's supposed to be like your big weaving narrative throughout a lot of it, then it really turns me off the movie in certain ways. So I think that she was a significant miss in this movie.
On the gadget side of things, definitely thumbs up for me. We've got the little camera recorder thing. We've got the silly little shoe, but that the briefcase is fantastic.
Yeah, definite improvement. Thumbs up for that.
Thumbs way up for me.
Villains, I like every single villain in this movie.
Yes,
they all play their roles very well, right?
Yeah, it's a very significant uptick from the previous one. There's a lot more villains surrounding it. And yeah, Grant's great, Kleb's great. Blofeld in the small role that he has is great as well. And the like extraneous villains surrounding it all play a role as well. So yeah, I was very impressed with the villains in this one.
On the music side of things, we just talked about it, so yeah. I like the theme. I like that they kept the Bond theme going. They placed it in some weird spots, and I don't like the 007 theme, the more bouncy one.
Yeah, I already said I liked From Russia with Love, and all the music here I thought fit the movie very well. Maybe like Tony doesn't like how they use the theme in some places, but I'm not as much of a stickler for the franchise right now, so it didn't really bother me.
It was very middle of the road, almost bordering on meh for me, just because like the main thing that I look out for with the music in Bond is the opening theme, and I thought that underwhelmed. So.
And the titles, we talked about that. It's, it's similar types of things. The title of the film itself, though, I really like it. From Russia with Love is this flowy type of thing. It's not every Bond film should just be called, the name of the villain or something. I actually prefer the movies that have the more poetic types of titles.
Yeah, it's a good name for the movie. It really sets that's the tone of the entire thing is based around the fact that it's essentially a girl from Russia who falls in love with Bond, essentially, and that's the idea of it. So it's a title that completely suits what the story is supposed to be.
And I think maybe outside of things like Live and Let Die, this is the one film name that has often been referenced or used in just regular pop culture. I've constantly heard, From Russia with Love, or like, hey, let's twist it, and it could be From Russia with Pain or From Russia with Hate. I've seen that done a lot, so clearly it stuck.
On the action side of things, we talked about it, but there's no need for the helicopter stuff and the boat stuff, but the action is filmed better, and overall a step up from Dr. No.
Yeah. And again, loved the fight scene with Grant.
Yeah, the fight scene's the highlight, and it's clear they've got more budget to be able to do other stuff, even if it was a bit gratuitous and unnecessary for the actual flow of the movie.
On the humor side of things, here's the moment that stands out to me as one of my favorite moments of the movie, as far as just like quips go and everything. When Bond is going up to the guy and he's like, "Excuse me, is your clock right?" Because they have they have the bomb in place, and the guy's like, "Yeah, the Russian clocks are always right." And he's like, "Okay." And he comes back and he's like, "Are you sure you're thinking?" And it blows up, and he's just like, "Oh, okay, there you go." I like that little part. The humor is good in this. There's some good moments here and there. Karim-Bey, of course, is the major highlight when it comes to the humor side of things.
Yeah, it's a lot more. It's understated, which is good, especially from the Bond side of things. The usual little quips. I thought, yeah, Karim-Bey is an excellent. It's not really comic relief because he does have a substantial character involved in it as well, but his personality and charisma was probably the most entertaining part of the whole movie for me.
Yeah, I thought the comedy here was very good, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but yes, I enjoyed it.
So, any other little thoughts before we do our final film assessment? Any other moments you want me to bring up?
These movies keep the progression of going from, getting better and better and better, because I was like, yeah, I can totally see myself watching this film again. This is one that I will definitely watch again. Dr. No, not so much.
I just can't get over the settling things in the gypsy way. That's kind of just going to follow me for a while now. Essentially, that's just that line is just going to follow me. Just like this, have to settle things in the gypsy way. I kind of want to use that in just my usual, like just going around certain things where I just see, I don't know, either like anybody just arguing with each other. It says, I think they just settle things in the gypsy way, and then just like stand back and just see what they think.
That's when we'd start doing the next Mount Rushmore, and we have to figure out, okay, well, who are we going to pick or whatever. We need to settle it in the gypsy way.
Yeah, just like the family's arguing at Thanksgiving or something. We could settle things in the gypsy way.
Maybe not with family, because apparently settling it in the gypsy way ends up with a threesome. So it's gonna...
Well, only if you interrupt it and like kill everyone else associated with it, and they say, okay, you decide.
If somebody outside the family comes in, then they are the one that sleeps with two family members.
Yeah, maybe you should just say something to like Caroline at one point, just like get into a fake argument with her and says, I think we should settle this in the gypsy way.
She watches those shows of like gypsy wedding crap and whatever. Oh, yeah. She would be like, oh, which way? And just kind of like she would know more about it than I would. So overall assessment, shaken, not stirred. I'm gonna say shaken. Good movie.
Very much shaken for me.
Ugh, I'm torn. No, because it's just there's so many things that I like about this movie because it just feels more like a Bond movie than Dr. No. But the overarching story, the overarching thing about the relationship between Bond and Tanya is just so badly done that I kind of have to give it stirred, I think.
I'm very surprised. I thought this was going to be one of your more favorite ones.
I love so many elements about it, but I just think that the whole crux of it, the whole thread that should connect the whole movie is really, really loose and or really, really like weak and is fraying at the edges and all this other stuff. And everything that surrounds it is fantastic and so much an improvement over Dr. No. But I think that part needed to be so much better for it to, just for the sake of the story. Like if that part was even just like a fraction better, it would definitely be shaken for me, like a full-fledged shaken. But I just feel like that's leaving a lot to be desired for me at the very least.
Fair enough. Yeah, so that is the second Bond film. We have many, many more to go. Obviously, we hope that you continue listening to this throughout the whole franchise that we're doing here, and you should be following us all over the place to make sure that you are aware of when these get posted, because we're recording them in advance. This is the 12th of January. I still have no idea when I'm going to post these. It's kind of depending on how many we can get through at different time frames and whatever. But if you are subscribed to the channel on YouTube and you get the email notifications, you'll be aware of when these things get posted. And the same thing with the website itself, of course, fanboysanonymous.com. If you follow us on Facebook and Twitter or anything, you'll get these alerts for different things outside of the Review to Overkill podcast. Because I do the Week in Geek, we do some movie reviews or some other things down the line, and you can check out whatever we've got happening on the review points or the fan tracks or whatever it might be. We might even do like a fan tracks for one of these films at some point instead of watching it like, and then reviewing it. We might end up doing like a fan track for one or something. I don't know. But check out whatever's happening there. Follow what these guys have going on as well. Tell us about your plugs, Rob.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at DudeFelice, and you can check out everything I'm doing on Fightful and WrestleZone, as always. But you should also check out what I'm doing here on Smart Guy Moment, including the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast. Callum, tell them about the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast.
Well, first of all, I'll tell you that we're on Fanboys Anonymous, not Smart Guy Moment, so we'll get that right first of all. But
it's Tony. It's a Tony site.
Okay? You're on the Tony panel. It works.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, I'm mostly featured over on the Smart Cat Moment side of things. So check out the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, where me and Rob are going through all of SmackDown in the tenureship of Paul Heyman as the head writer. So we're into 2003 right now. So if you're interested in wrestling and you're interested in some retro times from like the Ruthless Aggression era, then definitely check that out as well. If you're into wrestling in general, then you should be checking out smartcatmoment.com for all the great articles and news that we've got on the website. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Wickmeister14.
But
definitely.
Since you mentioned that we're here on Fanboys Anonymous, I guess we should say Tony and I have been doing a lot of stuff on Fanboys Anonymous. I don't know when this drops. So check out our Mulan review. Check out our review of Batman Soul of the Dragon. And Tony, what else we got coming over here?
I don't even know what else we've got coming, except for that eventually, somewhere along the line, we're going to do something about WandaVision. So I know that they're getting a staggered release, so we might do something after they're all done. We might do like a first impressions thing. I don't know. We'll figure it out. It might have already been done. Might already be up on the channel. Question marks, shrugs. Who knows? But what I do know is that coming up next is going to be 003, episode 003, not Agent 003. We're going to get into 008 instead. But follow us all over the place here. Follow me at Tony Mango. Follow the Fanboys Anonymous stuff, obviously, at fanboysanonymous.com, and the Smart Cat Moment stuff while we're on Smart Cat Moment. And we will be seeing you next time, everybody, because this podcast will return with Goldfinger.